Hello and welcome. Thanks for keeping your appointment, your Monday night appointment with Beyond the Headlines. I'm your presenter, Odette Campbell. This evening, we are going to be discussing some issues under the banner of current affairs. There are a number of issues that are current, has been discussed in the news, and we will be discussing those this evening with our panelists. And I'm happy to present the Honorable Peter David, the Minister for Labour and Foreign Affairs, soon to be the Minister for Agriculture. Mr. Joseh Andall, representing the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Christopher Allie, the business sector representative in the Senate, and civil society representative, Ms. Casandra Mitchell. Lady, gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening, Odette. Good evening to you, Odette. And to all viewers and listeners of the GBN.
Great. And so we are grateful that you could join us. And this evening, as we said, we are deliberating under the banner of current affairs. There's a lot of issues. There have been a lot of issues in the news, and we will delve right into them. One of the most topical issues relates to the Prime Minister's recent announcement of a cabinet reshuffle. And Minister David, we're coming right to you. You've been calling for a retraction of a statement. You want to start with that call for the retraction?
Minister, good evening, everybody. Good evening, panelists. Good evening, Grenada. I never asked for a retraction, actually, because I don't expect anybody to retract any statement of me. What I asked for was an apology to the farmers, because it was an insult to the farmers, not to me. I mean, I've been in this business for more than 40 years, so I can take that. I asked, actually, for those who would consider a minister going to agriculture to be demoted, to apologize to those who have insulted. They haven't insulted me. They have insulted farmers and the entire farming community, and I dare say the entire population of Grenada. So I actually asked for them to apologize to the farmers for that suggestion that they made, not for retraction.
All right. So let's go to Mr. Allie. Mr. Allie, what are your thoughts on the changes announced by the Prime Minister, which will take effect in October?
Well, Odette, first of all, let me just say good evening to all your viewers as well and to the rest of the panelists. I thought that the fact that the Prime Minister did not move the Minister of Health and the Minister of Education was an excellent move on his part. In fact, just purely from the point of view that the number of things happening in education and health being so fluid in this COVID environment, I thought keeping those two ministers in place was an excellent option that he explored and he announced, so that we could have continuity as it relates to how things are managed in those two particular areas. The other changes, I really don't have an opinion one way or the other. I think it's at the prerogative of the Prime Minister to move around his ministers and to do that as need be, and our political history indicates that this is something that happens all the time. So I really don't really have an opinion one way or the other, whether it's good or bad. I think that the Prime Minister, again, is at his, has his own wit and his own intentions as relates to that. And I'm either here nor there with it.
Let me make the circle around the panel and I'll come back. Because Mr. Allie, I want to ask you a follow-up question. Ms. Mitchell, your thoughts on the cabinet reshuffle?
Oh, good evening, Odette. Good evening to your listeners and viewers of the Beyond the Headlines show. My thoughts on the cabinet reshuffle. The first thing that stood out to me was, of course, the fact that the Prime Minister moved Minister David from Foreign Affairs to Agriculture, and the move or the letting go of the Ministry of Finance by our Prime Minister, and the stepping into the role of the Minister of Youth. That stood out for me. That was the first thing that stood out when I heard the announcement. I want to jump on the comment that Minister David is talking about retraction and apology to the farmers. I don't see why. We are living in a democracy. Everyone is entitled to their opinions. And you have to look at it from their perspective. I think the pronouncements about the demotion really had little to do with the minister, but more so the perception that the agriculture sector has been neglected by this administration. And for me, just moving around your cabinet without mentioning policies and programs that addresses some of the really, really critical sectors, including agriculture, are some of the reasons why people are seeing the move from foreign affairs to agriculture as a demotion. in that the agriculture sector practically have been given lip service by this administration. So I see nothing to apologize about, respectfully.
Mr. Andall, your thoughts on the cabinet reshuffle?
Hello. Good evening. And good evening once again to all the listeners and viewers and my fellow panelists. The reshuffle is the Prime Minister's prerogative. And there is one thing that struck me immediately, that apparently there has been some growth in Minister David, because this time there was no refusal to sign upon being reassigned to another ministry. So I'd like to congratulate the Honorable Minister for showing some personal growth in that regard. But on the other hand, I see the reshuffle as a Machiavellian move by Dr. Mitchell. Over the years, Dr. Mitchell has been boasting about exponential economic growth. This year, in the upcoming budget in a few weeks, he will be, whoever the Minister of Finance is, will have to be talking about contraction or negative growth in the economy. And just as Machiavelli suggested, when there is good news, the chief bears the good news. When there is bad news, you designate a lesser being to do that. So Dr. Mitchell has palmed off the Ministry of Finance on Mr. Bowen, because Mitchell does not want to be associated with the negative and declining situation of the economy. In terms of the other moves, it is almost ludicrous that we have a minister of vouchers. This, at most, requires a small department in a government ministry to assign an entire person to oversee the distribution of vouchers and other handouts. That is indeed laughable, or it would have been laughable had it not been additional costs on taxpayers. A perfect match in the reshuffle seems to be the retention of Minister Garaway as Minister of Disaster. I think that is a match so natural that there is no need to question it. So all in all, I don't expect anything to change, because the policies remain the same, the players remain the same, and you shuffle a deck of cards, you do not add anything new to the table. So I do not expect any new or better results from what we've been having.
So let me go back to the Honorable Peter David. Mr. David, I'm certain you might understand why there has been so much discussion in the public domain about the fact that you have been moved to what has been seen to a lesser portfolio. And I'm quoting from one of the pieces that was constructed post-reshuffle. And the person said, in November 2010, then Prime Minister Tillman Thomas reshuffled his cabinet, whereupon Chester Humphrey rushed to GBN to say that the Prime Minister must remember that the NDC was elected by a coalition of forces, and taking tourism from Peter David amongst to an attack on the progressive forces. There was a lot of discussion then. And to this date, people are referencing that move in 2010 and the reshuffle, which some saw as leading to the demise of the NDC. What are your thoughts within that frame? What happened then and what has happened now? Minister David, you need to unmute your microphone.
The history of myself and NDC is well played out in the public. I think what we're here to do tonight is because I don't want to now leave it. Mr. Andall talk about personal growth. Mr. Andall, I don't want to engage in a debate with you about that and personal growth and such issues that I believe are really side shows. The main show we should be engaged in, which is how do we develop the country. Now let's talk about the point the sister made. I think she made a good point in terms of Casandra, where she spoke about agriculture historically not being given its rightful place.
But Minister David, if you might, and if you don't mind, do you understand the public perception of the way you have embraced this change as compared to when you were seen as El Jefe in the NDC and there was all of this blow up in 2010?
Listen, Odette, I do not want to go to or even talking about what happened with NDC and the reshuffle, because it was not simply an issue of reshuffle. There were only for issues. You were eventually expelled from the NDC. I don't want to replay all of that. Those who want to debate that, we can debate that on a program that deals with me and NDC. I want to discuss what Casandra referred to, which is what attention are we to pay to agriculture? And that is the context in which I see my move to agriculture. When I was reshuffled, or whatever you call it, I did eventually sign up with the NDC. I went a couple of years with the NDC, and eventually they expelled me. I didn't leave the NDC, Mr. Andall. You expelled me eventually, but that is a matter for the history. What we have to discuss tonight is what Casandra said, which is whether or not we are paying sufficient attention to agriculture. And I agree with her. And I think most farmers in the country, the reason why they believe the move for me to move to agriculture is a good thing is because there seems to be a signal that we are going to be paying more attention to agriculture. Now, Cassandra, that is why I disagree with you. That if you are saying that historically agriculture wasn't given attention, and I am placed in agriculture and I embrace agriculture and I say, listen, let us move on with agriculture. It is the first time a minister from St. George's. There's a whole lot of issues around it, but I believe that by doing this, the Prime Minister is signaling a new attention to agriculture. And I do hope that when I move there, I will come with the same passion. You know, today I listened to Ponty Archibald speak about agriculture on a 1.5-hour program. And he was absolutely correct. Let us all embrace agriculture. I think Cassandra's point, yes. There are people, and I accept that. There are people who would see that as a devotion because those persons are looking at the historic attention or lack of attention that some people believe was paid to attention. Fine, I don't absolutely agree with it, but let's place that in context. Are you not now satisfied or believing that we can move agriculture forward with my community agriculture? Well, let's wait and see. I'm going to be briefed tomorrow morning by Minister. I will meet with persons like Chris Allie, who is marketing board. I will meet the farmers. I've met some of them already, and then we will decide on the way forward. But no, I don't agree with all of the naysayers that, you know, NDC and all of that. Let's move forward. We have to develop this country, and that's what we're here to do.
If I may, Minister David, I don't think you can actually say wait and see. Agriculture has been on the back burner for a number of years, and not just this administration. There is a large percentage of individuals who believe that the NDC didn't pay much attention to agriculture either. And we are in a period where agriculture now is on the forefront. Everybody's talking about agriculture, especially, you know, during this COVID. Yeah. So I think no, what you need to do is to explain to us, the people, why you are the best person to be in the agriculture sector. Many people, we see you as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Tourism, Minister of Labor. Now you're in agriculture. I think what people are concerned about is why you. And I see the other side.
I am not yet the Minister of Agriculture. I will be briefed tomorrow morning by the Minister. There is only one Minister of Agriculture at a time. When I become Minister of Agriculture, I am prepared to debate with you.
Yes, may I just chime in for a few moments, please?
I agree with you.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah, I wasn't here, Mr. David. Apparently his mic was muted or something. Is it still on, Odette?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, please go right ahead.
Yes, just wanted to correct something. Of course, I don't think that Casandra was expressing her opinion, but instead merely reporting the perceptions of other people. And when we are comparing the achievements or lack thereof of different administrations in different sectors, we must always bear in mind that for 21 of the past 25 years, the new National Party has been in government. And therefore, the comparison of the achievements of NNP against those of the NDC are not really fair. They're not balanced. But for example, for the 4.5 years that the NDC was in office, the NDC inherited a situation where the Marbo Farm School had been totally neglected, with 2 students enrolled. And at the end of 4 years, there were over 50 students engaged in agricultural studies at that institution. That must be considered a major achievement. We look at the situation again of the mechanization of agriculture. One of the problems that agriculture remains that causes agriculture to remain in the doldrums is the perception of an woman in ragged clothes with a hoe, a cutlass, and a fork on his back. That is the picture that has been painted in agriculture for generations of Grenadians. We have to change that mindset, change that image of farming, of agriculture, and of the farmer. We have to start now infusing technology. And the NDC had already embarked on that road. For example, with the introduction of rotavators to small farmers throughout the country, taking a lot of backbreaking labor out of agriculture. We have to look beyond the past, however. Let's use it as a guide as we shape policies going forward. But when we're talking about agriculture, we must look at the question of predial larceny. This is a perennial problem. And we have to look at how we can merge technology. For example, we can use drone technology. We know that there is only a finite number of police officers who go about doing patrols of the fields and so on. We know that the farmers have to go home, they have to rest and so on. But if we can begin to employ drones to do patrolling both day and night, I am sure that we can see and we will see a significant reduction in the incidence of predial larceny, which is a great deterrent to our farmer. We have to look also at the question of inputs in agriculture. Merely changing the minister will not be enough.
But Mr.
If
Andall, you
farmers
mentioned
still
the
do not
whole
have
issue.
access to water and irrigation facilities, if farmers do not have a reliable market, if there is no planning into what we plant, where we plant it, when we plant it, and how much we plant, we are going to end up with the perennial problem of glut and shortage.
So, Mr. Andall, I'm certain that those are issues that the minister will
It's a bad word
want
in
to
some circles, but
hone in
all
on.
countries, especially the industrialized countries of the, we have to look at the question of protection or providing some form of cocoon for our local farmers. Of course, eventually, we live in a competitive world, and if you cannot compete, you are going to die. So
right,
we
Mr. Andall,
cannot
let me ask you, Mr. Andall, let me ask you to just stick a pin here. We could come back to some of those policy issues which I'm certain Minister David will want to look into when he assumes duties as the Minister for Agriculture. I want to ask, you mentioned, Mr. Andall, that there's just a finite number of police officers to look at the issue of predial larceny. I want to go back to Minister David. Minister David, looking at the finite number of officers to deal with the whole issue of predial larceny, the Prime Minister made a comment recently about using a different word, but meaning the same thing, the finite number of police officers to go after people who are involved in marijuana use. And he thinks that this is time for a conversation. One of the schools of thought on the ground is that the government probably has strategically positioned you as the Minister for Agriculture to lead Grenada's charge into the decriminalization of marijuana. And we saw the NDC making a comment. Do you think that the NDC tried to upstage you and to probably pull the wind out of your sails?
Yes, I don't think my vote was tailored anywhere with respect to that specifically. No, let me just say this. The Cabinet of Grenada did appoint a committee of the Minister of Health, the Minister for Agriculture, and the Minister for Legal Affairs back in 2019, late 2019, to look at the report of the Caribbean Commission. You know, there was a Caribbean Commission on the issue of the Regional Marijuana Commission. The Prime Minister, the Cabinet, did appoint a commission, a committee of the Commission's report. Let me state, was first agreed by all of the heads. And one of the items at the report, it said the report also agreed that each member state, in accordance with its own circumstances, would determine the path it would pursue in relation to the law reform models proposed by the Regional Marijuana Commission. The committee, the heads, all of the heads, including Grenada, also agreed that action was necessary at the national level by the relevant authorities to review the current status of marijuana as a dangerous drug with a view to reclassification, taking into account all international obligations. I have to say that in the 2018 report was agreed by all heads. So all heads agreed, including Grenada, to move forward to determine how we deal with marijuana. A committee of cabinet with the Minister of Health, Minister of Legal Affairs, Minister of Agriculture was set up to look at the issue. They have been meeting, they have been looking at best practices, and they are going to be consulting with all of the relevant entities. So the government has already agreed with the Commission's report. Antigua has gone ahead in one direction, Barbados has gone in a direction, Dominica has gone in a direction, each country will determine its direction. What the Grenada cabinet agreed with the appointment of this committee, that they will make a determination as to the direction after consultation with all national entities. Now, the NDC has already stated a position, so I expect the consultation with the NDC will be less time, more briefer, if that's a word, than the other consultation. But the government has gone in that direction, and certainly the Minister of Agriculture, I was not on the committee, I will now be on the committee as Minister of Agriculture if when I'm appointed. I'm just now designate Agricultural Minister, and then we'll go in a direction. We will hear what NDC has to say. We hope NDC is united on the issue. We had instances in the past where the NDC made comments with respect to the referendum on CCJ and all of that, and then there was some confusion. We hope that they're united on the issue, and we have consultations and determine where the country goes. As a government, you are the government of all of the people, and you have to consult with all of the people, and I assure you that the people will be consulting, and then a decision will be taken in that.
Mr. Andall, some people are accusing the NDC of playing politics with the issue because you suspected that that was one of Minister David's flagship issues to be dealt with, and you just decided to go on Friday and try to pull the wind out of his sails. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, we have no control over what people think or suspect. They are free to have opinions, and we respect the right to have those opinions, even if we may disagree with them. In terms, I do not particularly like the association with Minister David with the issue of ganja, which at this point is still considered an illegal drug. It smacks of casting aspersions on the character of the honorable gentleman. And I wish that people would stop making that association. Yeah? The NDC principle, though, is a long-standing commitment to review and to assess the matter of the decriminalization and ultimately legalization of marijuana. In fact, the policy document which was issued around November 2016, one of the previous drafts, in fact, the draft before the final document was published, did contain the whole discussion on the question of decriminalization/legalization of cannabis. So this is nothing new for us. In fact, in 2017, our party even commissioned a poll, and the results of that poll coincided very closely with polls carried out across the sub-region by the Barbadian polls, what's his name, Peter Wickham. Wickham did polls in Barbados, Antigua, and a couple other countries, and there was fairly strong support in all of the islands for the decriminalization of marijuana. In the NDC, we recognize that our country is a very youthful one. And when you look at the number of lives that have been ruined through convictions for possession of small quantities of cannabis, a young man, usually it's men, that get stopped and tried by the police, ends up before the court and gets a criminal record. You cannot further your studies, you cannot gain employment in certain places, you cannot gain entry to some other countries because of visa restrictions, conviction for criminal offenses and so on. And these are young men who are otherwise exemplary citizens. So to hold that as a sort of Damocles hanging over the head of our people, we believe that the time has come for us to revisit that situation and to correct that anomaly. Of course,
we get a point, Mr. Andall, but the question was whether the NDC was edging on the side of political expediency on that subject matter. We need to take a commercial break, but when we come back, I want to go to the private sector representative in the Senate and to Casandra to talk about other aspects of last week's cabinet reshuffle. And we have a whole host of other issues to attend to this evening. We have a three-pronged approach coming out of Barbados, a speech made by the Honorable Mia Motley. We'd like to look at some of those. And there are concerns about development and where emphasis is being placed, whether too much emphasis is being placed on tourism. And we'd also be entertaining our calls this evening. This is Beyond the Headlines. Do stay with us.
Total is one of the world's largest oil companies with a top quality line of lubricants. Total Lubricants has a full product line from passenger cars, motorcycle, heavy industrial equipment, mining, trucking, agriculture, and manufacturing machines and vehicles. Total Lubricants, winning championships in motorsports, including Formula One and World Rally Championships. Total Lubricants are available at all Rubis service stations, leading automotive shops, and distributed by Huggins.
How going on, boy?
Hey, good old things.
Hey, Daisy.
Yeah.
Boy, in line, boy. Your house looking a real good day.
Boy, it's thanks to the hard-working and professional staff at the Housing Authority of Grenada. They handled me real nice. They did my plan, they did the construction, and I didn't even have to worry about a thing. They were there with me every step of it, supervising the job, asking me about my concerns, giving me feedback as the house took shape. They were there from start to finish, and even put the keys in the palm of my hand. I give them an A++ for customer service.
Oh, it's people from housing bad, boy.
Boy, not bad. Excellent. If you're thinking about constructing your home, why not consult the Housing Authority of Grenada? You could visit them right down in the Sandino complex, or give them a call, 440-1015 or 440-1016. Or check out their website, hag473.com. They go handle you. They go jog your blocks, they go draw your plan, they go tote your materials. Hey man, where you going? The Housing Authority of Grenada is your choice for affordable housing and a stress-free construction experience.
I'm reaching my dreams with GOT. They're the ones for me. I'm reaching my dreams with GOT. They're the ones for me. Since 1983, they've been serving the country, and we like all their financing, giving the people what they want, what they need, what they love. Come and join the family that's here for you all the way, from birth to graduation, your first job to your home, and your car through your golden years.
The GT Credit Union has been actively supporting nation building through its many sponsorships and the programs including Financial Literacy Quiz, Pass the Torch Calypso Program, Junior Cooperatives in Secondary Schools, CPEA, and the TAMCC Grants. The credit union has helped many people make their dreams come true. Let them help you with yours. You don't have to be a teacher to be a member. So what are you waiting for?
GUT Credit Union, it's where you belong.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening we're discussing current affairs, and our panelists, the Honourable Peter David, the incoming Minister for Agriculture. He's presently the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Labour. Mr. Joseph Andall of the NDC, the private sector representative in the Senate, Mr. Allie, and we have civil society representative, Ms. Casandra Mitchell. Mr. Allie, what are your thoughts on the reassignment of Minister Boeing from Infrastructure and Works to Ministry of Finance?
Like Cassandra, I thought it was an interesting move as well. And of course, the Prime Minister taking up youth. The only thing I could say, Odette, is probably the Prime Minister needs a break from finance, especially in this COVID environment and all that has been happening. Finance is a ministry that has a lot of work with it associated with it because of the amount of foreign, regional and foreign associations and people that you have to be meeting with, and it's still articulating how you deal with the local management of meeting your expenses on a monthly basis and so on. So I suspect with all of that, probably Prime Minister needed a break, and probably that was a way of dealing with it and handing it to Mr. Bowen and seeing how long that would last. But then again, in a cabinet is a collective. So anything in finance will engage the Prime Minister as well. So I don't think there's much of a difference in moving it from himself to Mr. Bowen. I want to say one thing about the Peter David issue, though. Probably, if the assumption is that Minister David was a very good Minister of Tourism and Foreign Affairs, then probably the move by Prime Minister to give agriculture some prominence and put in Peter David there as Minister, maybe to see how he could move that particular sector, understanding how well he operated in tourism and what he took to make tourism and and international affairs as good as it was is. Probably that is the thinking, and probably that's another way we could look at it when we discuss these issues of moving ministers and their portfolios.
But Mr. Daly, in the movie The Devil Wears Prada, Meryl Streep, who people think is after Anna Wintour, the line is, if it's good, it's on me. If it's bad, it's on you. And the comment is that we're heading into some turbulent headwinds, and as such, somebody else must be made to take the blame. What's your thought here?
I don't agree with that. I think Minister Bowen has been a very effective minister in his particular portfolios and that he has had in the past. The Prime Minister has been a good Minister of Finance. I mean, it's up for debate depending on if you want to give it a political spin or if you want to be as objective as possible, understanding all the constraints that a country faces both internationally and otherwise when it comes to managing finances of a country. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I think these both ministers are very well experienced, have a proven track record, debatable by some, but I think generally have a proven track record. So I don't see it as what you're alluding to there, Odette, that if it's bad, let me move it to it, and if it's good, I take all the credit. I don't necessarily see that as, I think it's an issue of where both gentlemen are very experienced, and moving it from one to the next, in my view, may not necessarily change the outcome of the performance.
Casandra, your thought on the Prime Minister assuming the role of youth affairs?
Well, just to piggyback on what Mr. Dialli was saying, interesting perspective that he has on the Prime Minister's move from finance to youth. But not too long ago, the Prime Minister was awarded Best Finance Minister in the Caribbean. And as a country, I mean, as a world, a lot of economies are going through a lot of financial constraints. And one would think that the person with the most experience and the person who has been deemed one of the best finance minister in the Caribbean would hold on to the reins in a time when our economy is going through some really difficult times. So I find it very, very interesting that he's handing it over to someone who many perceives have little experience in the finance sector. And the Prime Minister boasts about it all the time, how other finance ministers across the Caribbean are coming to him and asking for advice. So why are you moving away from finance in a time when our economy, your economy, is perceiving to be failing? I mean, you spoke recently when you were the Prime Minister about the drop in revenue collection. All of those things is what, especially as young people, as civil society, we are paying attention to. So it'll be really interesting to find out really why was that ministry handed over to another individual and him taking over youth. And Mr. Dialli is alluding to the fact that he must be retired, but taking on the Ministry of Youth with young people who are vibrant and full of energy, in of itself is almost similar to taking on the Ministry of Finance. I'm always curious, I am curious when he mentioned that he's now the Minister of Youth, as to whether or not he believes he has the energy to take us on, we as young people, in a time when it is perceived that young people have become more vocal on national issues. Is it, can we accept that he sees the ministry has failed the young people? So he's now taking it over. His move to the ministry, would it make a difference in the Ministry of Youth? Would it help us as young people? Are they going to be changing policies and programs to help us as young people? Again, I mentioned it earlier, you have shuffled the pack, but I haven't seen, or we haven't seen any change or haven't heard any change in policies or programs that are going to affect the critical sectors, including youth development.
Casandra, there's this perception that you have a very disenchanted youth, and this is being pinned to some of what we saw happen in the post-COVID period in the last 2 months. We had the demonstrations led by youth, the most poignant one being the demonstration on the parliamentary headquarters with regard to the COVID-19 control bill. Do you think probably that is a reflection of the Prime Minister's decision?
Well, the Prime Minister will have to answer that question, but it is something that is an assumption on the ground. Among us as young people, we have spoken about that. The Prime Minister moves from finance to youth could be, and one of the reasons is that as young people, we decided that we are going to speak up about the COVID bill, and not just the COVID bill. There are a lot of national issues that as young people, we are very, 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 very concerned about. And I'm hoping that that move and him taking over the reign of the Ministry of Youth Development is actually going to make a difference. But the perception on the ground is that nothing is going to change. And again, I'm coming back to policies, what programs have been implemented from the cabinet level that's going to address the issues that we as young people are facing, we as Grenadians are facing.
Minister David?
Could I just chime in for a moment, please?
Let me just ask Minister David a quick question, if you don't mind. Minister David, there's a question about the rationale for separating health, Ministry of Health, and hospital services, where you have hospital services going to the Honorable Delma Thomas in Social Affairs.
Yes, I mean, there's a whole lot of thinking now about how do you deal with the issue of health, wellness. I think is a new term that we use. You see, the hospital has to do with the administration of the institutions where people come for health care when they are ill, and there are issues of how do you keep people well? How do you deal with broadly other issues related to health? And the issue of the delivery of health in the hospital has been one that has plagued our nation for years. In fact, going way back to my youth, the hospital itself, the services you receive at the hospital, x-rays, emergency services, nursing in the hospitals, doctors in the hospital. And I think what the Prime Minister indicated in his decision to do that is that there needs to be somebody and some entity that deals with that, especially in a period of a pandemic, because remember, we're now in a pandemic, and the pandemic appears to be with us for at least another year or maybe more. While the Minister of Health deals with those other issues, he's going to have not only a minister, but a permanent secretary and a unit that deals with the health services. And that's the rationale behind it. I think it's quite a positive approach, so that when people go to the hospital, they get the services they need, while the other issues related to the pandemic and other health issues are dealt with by the Minister of Health. That's the rationale, and I think it's quite an interesting and possibly very positive outcome for health delivery in Grenada.
All right, Mr. Andall, I'll come to you shortly, but let me just stay with Minister David for a quick 30 seconds. Minister David, before we move off, there's a request for you putting on your legal hat to explain quickly the difference between decriminalization of marijuana and a smile, shoot away.
Okay, it's like okay, decriminalization means it's not a criminal offense in the sense that, okay, look at a driver. Somebody's driving a vehicle, they're found driving over the speed limit or a seatbelt. It's not a criminal offense. It's a violation. So they do not have a criminal record. So, for example, in some countries, they would say a small quantity in Antigua, and other countries, maybe Dominica soon, I'm not sure what they've done so far, they would say a small amount of cannabis will be, possession of it will not be a criminal offense. So that will be decriminalized, possession of a small amount. So you don't get a criminal record, you get a ticket. It's not legal, meaning you're not legally allowed, as you're not legally allowed to drive over the speed limit or drive without a seatbelt. It's illegal, but not a criminal offense. So that's the difference between decriminalization and I wanted to refer to something that Mr. Andall spoke of earlier, the surveys he spoke about. 30% of the people of Grenada in 2018, 30% believed that it should be fully legalized. 31% say it should be partially decriminalized, and 22% said it should remain illegal, and 17% said they're not sure. So I think the people in the survey understood full legalization means, listen, you can have any amount of weed, smoke any amount of weed that you want. It's not a criminal offense. Decriminalized means it's an offense, but you get a ticket, but you won't want a criminal record, which addresses the issue Mr. Andall spoke of earlier with young people having a criminal record. And so that's the essential difference. Sorry if I'm long-winded, but I just tried to explain it as best I can.
Good. I want to go back to Mr. Andall. He's been wanting to get in on a point. Mr. Andall, thanks for your patience.
No problem. Just a couple of things. I just felt that one of the ideas put forward by Senator Allie to justify the switch between Dr. Mitchell and Mr. Bowen, that doesn't really hold water. The COVID, if anything, COVID means that there is far less, if physical interaction among people. So there is no foreign travel involved. There is no meeting of foreign delegations. So I think that is a consideration. On the
You're not assuming Zoom is still working.
Dr. Mitchell's assumption of Dr. Mitchell's
it's not assuming what, Mr. Allie?
Trajectory.
You're not assuming that Zoom is still active and you could have meetings by Zoom. You don't have to travel to have meetings with Andall.
That's what I said. I said that you were talking about him having to interact and tired, so let time for a break.
Yes,
anyway,
and you could have Zoom meetings and get tired.
Yes, his modus operandi has been to throw money at problems. And the question of youth and the problems facing youth, of course it will involve money, but simply throwing money at the youth will not cut it. And I believe that it was a grave injustice done to the youth to have a person who is virtually in a geriatric condition assume the responsibility for dealing with the youth. The youth speak a language. I have 3 children in their 20s, and sometimes when they speak, I need one of them to interpret for me. So even the language that they use is different from what us, the older ones, are accustomed to, what we are accustomed to. So I think that it is a bit of a slap in the face to have the oldest parliamentarian assume that responsibility. I believe that there should have been someone closer to the generation who can empathize more with them, who understands more what they are going through, and has a better rapport with them, understands language and everything associated with youth culture to deal with that issue. And this question of throwing money at everything has resulted over the years in a lot of monies going down the drain. And I will not go over the lineage of wastage. I think everybody in Grenada over the age of 15, I hope, knows about all of the wastage that has been taking place over the years. But I must talk about the question of the parallel political civil service that has been established by this administration and by the usurpation of the functions and the role of the state by the ruling party. There's a case in point, MP Tobias Clement. He is the duly elected parliamentary representative for the people in George Northeast. Each parliamentary representative is assigned an office paid for by our tax dollars. We all know that in practice, these offices, which belong to us, the public, have been commandeered by the new National Party for their own party end. So they no longer have to pay rent because they are taxpayers paying for the parliamentary offices, which function as de facto NNP offices. So all responsibility for administering matters pertaining to his constituency have been stripped from MP Clement and relocated to a sub-office representing nobody in Willis. And we call on the new National Party and the government of Grenada to desist, that until and unless Mr. Clement resigns or is duly replaced in a general election, he must be allowed to exercise the functions of his office as Member of Parliament for St. George Northeast.
Right, and
we have a situation where all government services
that has been belabored on several programs. In the interest of time, I'd like us to move on because we have like 6 different topics that I'd like us to cross. Let's move to Barbados. Recently, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, she made a major announcement last week. She actually had 3 major points in her speech. She spoke about Barbados going republic and that the Queen will be removed as head of state. She's saying that as the last vestige of colonialization, that should be removed. And the question is, should Grenada move in that direction? Minister David, any plans by the government to have Grenada go in the direction of being a republic, as Dominica is Guyana, Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? Minister David?
Odette, we had a referendum a couple of years ago. Back, we had 2 referendums. On both occasions, we tried to do some decolonization. In fact, we tried to remove the Privy Council. We tried to have term limits. I hear people talking about Prime Minister Mitchell is there so long. Well, the opposition really doesn't have the moral authority to talk much about that because they did offer term limits, which would have limited the amount of time the Prime Minister could be in office. But they refused, and the same point I was making, I don't want to go tribal tonight on this, but I'm saying to you, Odette, that if we are going to go down the road of constitutional reform, I am not sure if my friend Mr. Andall and the opposition will ever support it. I mean, we tried already to make some baby steps. The first time we went, we had about 11 or 12 on the agenda. We went back with about 3 or 4 on the agenda. There was a commitment to support, then the commitment was thrown out, despite the fact that they said they supported everything, including Privy Council and CCJ, which if Mia is talking about Republic and removing the Queen, that imagine what the opposition will say having just rejected the CCJ. So I am saying I will advocate for that. In fact, I have always advocated that we should finally decolonize the region. The step we took with respect to Privy Council failed. I believe we should start a conversation about it. I think Mia is being very progressive. She's one of the very progressive leaders in the region. I think we should look at it and if we get buy-in, because I don't want us to go down the road again. When we open a conversation, everybody says yes, let's go down the road, and then we have another failed referendum. That is going to break the spirit of the people in moving forward. So, yes, I believe we should have that conversation. With respect, if I may just say this, with respect to reshuffle, just a quick comment. There was a whole saying with Michael Manley years ago. He went to a meeting and he walked on water. And when the next morning, the headlines was that he could not swim. In other words, no matter what he did, they was going to criticize. The Prime Minister has made a decision to let us wait and see the results of the reshuffle. None of us know the thinking of the Prime Minister. It's okay to speculate. As my sister Casandra said, everybody has freedom of opinion, and I also have a freedom of opinion to respond to their opinion. So I'm responding to their opinion using my freedom of expression.
Mr. Diali, can I come to you, please? Mr. Diali, I hope it's either you walk or you swim, one way or the other. What is your thought on Mia's pronouncement last week?
Well, I mean, I thought the more interesting pronouncement was the fact that she wants to move a government to accept same-sex marriage.
I was going to get to that, but I just wanted to deal with that first. But you can skip ahead.
Yeah. So I thought that was more interesting than removing the Queen. I mean, I think in the end of the day, as Minister David indicated, is a conversation that have to start. I myself not sure what our people show they want, and moving from a colonial type government to a republic status. I don't know if people understand what are the implications or not of doing so. And it's not just about getting rid of the Queen as head of state. It's also putting in another institutional layer in terms of the presidency in a republic and what that entails. So I think there's a lot to discuss around that. But as I said, I believe the more interesting one was the same-sex union and recognizing that to some degree in order for her to be more internationally palatable as it relates to the accepting of these types of unions. So, I mean, again, I believe there's pressure being exercised internationally on some of our small countries who still have these things in our law books and are termed non-progressive. And I believe that is one of the ways that in a COVID environment and pressures on countries economically, that may be a way to relieve some pressure and to attract funding probably from other institutions that frown on countries that still have things like that in their law books.
Casandra, your take on Prime Minister Motley's comments in that regard? We could probably skip the removal of the Queen as head of state, but same-sex union?
Yes. Well, if you have to, when you say remove don't speak about the removing of Queen.
No, I'm not saying don't. I'm saying in interest of time,
but if you have to address all of the things, the three main issues that you mentioned, you have to first start talking about constitution reform, as Minister David said. But even before you do that, I think one of the main reasons why the referenda failed is that many don't understand the Constitution. Many people have not even read the Constitution. They don't know the contents. So you first have to get the people to understand the contents of the Constitution, what the current Constitution says, and how the changes are going to affect them. That is the first thing that you have to do. and then let the people decide what they're going to change. Well, I think another reason why the referenda failed is that the referenda was pushed by politicians. In order to talk constitution reform, the suggestions have to come from the people. And I think that was one of the mistakes of both referenda. The ideas came from what many believe to be politicians pushing an agenda. So you have to go out there and educate people. It's a perception. Yes, that politicians are pushing it.
But persons like yourself, therefore, have to come forward and lead the conversation.
But that's what we've been doing. I'm actually part of the caucus committee, and we have been doing constitution awareness. So we have been doing it.
Excellent, excellent.
Okay, and just before we take a commercial break, Mr. Andall, has NDC articulated any position on same-sex union?
No, we have not. And as far as I'm aware, no political party in Grenada has addressed that issue. There's a couple of things. I think I must rebut some ideas put forward by Honorable Peter David regarding
let me ask you, Mr. Andall, I just wanted to get through the more
on the surface of them. You see a headline.
We must take a commercial break at this time because it's 9:30. We normally take the break at 9:25, and I promise that when we come back, we're coming back to you. This is Beyond the Headlines. We're looking at current affairs this evening. Do stay with us.
Do your dreams seem far away from coming true? The National Lotteries Authority's Lotto Jackpot is $270,000. Fulfilling your plans can be just one ticket away. So play today. Lotto. Play and win a lot of money.
A pleasant evening to everyone. Welcome to the National Lotteries Authority's Lotto Draw number 3117 for today, Monday, September 21st, 2020. I am Anisha Charles. With me this evening is Ms. Joseh Clark from PKF Accountants and Business Advisors, whose purpose is to ensure that this show is conducted in an accountable manner, and the game balls with industry standards and in a way tampered with. At this time, she had tickets at hand because we're about to play for a jackpot of $270,000. But first, your free ticket letter. Good luck. This evening's free ticket letter is check your tickets. Your free ticket letter for this evening is a D, as in dollar. Let's proceed for 5 winning numbers. Good luck. First number for this evening is check your tickets in the meantime. First number for this evening is 29. Second number is 22. Third number is 23, followed by 28. Fifth and final number. Final number is 21. Let's recap those numbers. Check your tickets. First number up is 29. The second, 22. Third, 23, followed by 28. Fifth and final is 21. So that's 29, 29, 22, 22, 23, 23, 28, 28, and 21, 21. Your free ticket letter for this evening is a D, as in dollar. Congratulations to all the winners of this evening's Lotto Draw. Lotto, play and win a lot. Remember, play all the games of the National Lotteries Authority, supports sports, culture, and nation building. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful evening.
Tick, tock, toe. I win.
Feel like a big kid again when you play NLA's new scratch game, Tic-Tac-Toe. It's instant cash on the go. Reveal 3 X's or 3 O's in the same row, column, or diagonally, and win the prizes shown, or as much as $5,000. Win easy with Scratch. Must be 18 or older to play. Tic-Tac-Toe, please.
Give me a tic-tac-toe, please.
Tic-tac-toe, please.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. This evening we're discussing matters of current affairs, and we have with us the Honorable Peter David, the incoming Minister for Agriculture. Mr. Joseph Andall of the National Democratic Congress, Ms. Casandra Mitchell, she is one of the local activists, and also we have the business sector representative in the Senate, Mr. Allie. We have so far looked at the decriminalization of marijuana. We looked at the cabinet reshuffle and some of the attendant matters. And before we went to break, Mr. Andall wanted to get a point in, and Mr. Andall, as promised, we're coming straight to you. What was the point, sir? All right. I understand that Mr. Andall is engaged, otherwise probably is on his cell phone and is not hearing us at this time. As soon as we could get him, we'll accommodate him. Let me go to Minister David. Minister David, under the issues related to current affairs, you made a very impassioned speech and appeal in Parliament a few days ago, and one of the comments you made referenced xenophobia, and you were concerned apparently that people were getting down some dangerous roads, and it had to do with the whole issue of concern about the level of Chinese investment in Grenada.
I have concerned about xenophobia. Well, let me start by saying that there's always need to be civil society involvement and people's responses to actions of the government. I'm in no way suggesting that people do not have a right or should be, and in fact, an obligation to make known their views on some particular tendencies. But when I believe some of it is driven not by the best interests of the country, but by some particular interests, then I certainly will make my comment. I mean, I look at countries like the United States, they have hundreds of billions of Chinese investment. You look at Europe, you look at Britain, where in 1 year there was $8 billion worth of Chinese investment. And there's investment in the larger countries. Places like Rockefeller Center in the US, and there's about 20-something ports owned by Chinese investors in the US. Yet, if we have an investor in Grenada or deal with Chinese, the Chinese state, there's this phobia that we are allowing the Chinese to overtake us. Let me say this. With respect to the state, the Chinese state, I have visited China many times, and I've been dealing with Chinese diplomats for years. Never on one occasion has Grenada been told to do anything in return for assistance. Secondly, with respect to the pillars on which our relationship is based, we do not interfere in China's internal affairs, neither does China interfere in our internal affairs. Now, if there's an issue with Chinese investors or US investors or UK investors doing something that is improper, it is an obligation of the part of the citizen to raise the concern. So if in any of the projects that we are, it's a US investor or Grenadian investor or Vincentian investor, yes. But when the concerns are coupled with what I believe is a narrow nationalism, as we see happening in our northern neighbor, where there's a xenophobia against a particular nationality, then I am concerned. So I am welcoming concerns. If there's investment in Grenada and somebody believes that the investor is not in the best interest of the country, then certainly we can have that debate. But let not the debate be infused with nationalism, narrow nationalism, and xenophobia. And that was my concern that I expressed in the past.
Minister David,
yes.
Viewed
So
within the context and within the frame, the Belt and Road Initiative is a global infrastructure development strategy adopted by the Chinese government to invest nearly in 70 countries internationally. And it is considered the centerpiece of the Communist Party. The Chinese government calls the initiative a bid to enhance regional connectivity and embrace a brighter future. However, some observers interpret it as a plan for Chinese world domination through a China-centered global trading network. The second part of the concern relates to the fact that, according to Carmen Reinhardt, the World Bank's chief economist, 60% of lending from Chinese banks is to developing countries where sovereign loans are negotiated bilaterally and in secret. And that has come from the World Bank, a senior official of the World Bank. Loans are backed by collateral, such as rights to ports or money. Critics use the term debt trap diplomacy to claim China intentionally extends excessive credit to a debtor country with the alleged intention of extracting economic or political concessions from the debtor country when it becomes unable to honor its debt obligations. With this concern coming from an official of the World Bank, should Grenadians not be concerned?
From an official from the World Bank does not mean that we have to fall for the xenophobia that is engulfed in it. Now, let me tell you this, and Chris, in this regard, there is no secret deal in Grenada with the Chinese government. All of the assistance we receive are open and public. There are loans given by the Chinese government, for example, to several developing countries. And let me tell you this, Odette. It is up to the nation state. Grenada is a sovereign country. We negotiate for loans with several countries, with the United Kingdom, with the United States, with agencies, IMF, and so on, and all of it is open and transparent. There is no secret deals between Grenada and the Chinese. And that kind of xenophobia. You see, one of the problems is this, Odette, and we must place things in a global context. China is the second largest economy in the world. When Richard Nixon went to China in the 1970s to open up China, he was not doing so for any sinister motive. China is a huge market, and there was going to be bilateral relations between them. The U.S. was going to benefit from the Chinese market, and the Chinese were going to benefit from export to the U.S. That is the way the world trading system is done. We, as developing countries, need foreign investment. Look at it. There was a time when myself and persons like Chris was growing up, we used to get CEDA scholarships to Canada, scholarships to the US, scholarships to the United Kingdom. No, that exists anymore. Where do we get scholarships? To China, to Cuba, to Serbia, to Russia. Where do we get healthcare from? Cuba, China. Where are our doctors trained, Odette? China, Cuba. The point I'm making, we have sought to develop these bilateral relations and we have benefited from. We should not let other countries, with their own interests, cause us to not see our own development interests. And that's the point I'm making. I'm not suggesting that we close our eyes and do any deals. And Chris, who is a private sector man, will tell you we don't do that. But at the same time, we must not drink medicine for another man's disease. We have developing needs. Our traditional partners have not been able to come forward with some aspects of our development needs. So while we maintain solid relations with the US, solid relations with the United Kingdom, solid relations with Canada, we reserve the right, just like Richard Nixon did in the 1970s, we reserve the right to develop relations with other countries. The US has over $185 billion worth of investments in the US.
Minister David, if you look at Grenada, 133 square miles, and you have increased involvement and what some people have using now the phrase encroachment on Grenadian territory, where you have a project in the north, the Chinese involvement, a project in the south, the Chinese involvement. Is the Chinese involved in probably investing in the airport as well, which is one of the areas... Why are you saying
Chinese involvement? Why are you using the word Chinese involvement?
What is wrong with using the word Chinese involvement, Mr. Minister?
Because the company in the north is from Singapore. But anyway,
I'm saying to you, if there is concern about the level of Chinese involvement in Grenada, including through the CBI program,
The company in the north is a Singapore company. The people's ethnicity is Chinese. So let us not get this xenophobia. You mean the way the people look is a problem? Now we can address the project.
You have just stated, Mr. Minister.
I've been on the sideline for about the last half an hour or so.
From Singapore. That is a Chinese involvement.
Trying to get your attention. The fact is that in the north we have a project. I agree with those who would criticize. When I say I agree with them, that they have a right to question the project and question aspects of the project. What I disagree with is a xenophobia that is being brought to the debate. And that is it. Let us discuss the project. Let us discuss the EIAs, the Environmental Impact Assessments, and Chris can address that. Chris is the chairman of CBI, he can address these issues. But let us not...
Chris is not the only person that can address it.
Wait, just one second.
My dear brother, don't interrupt you. Let us address it in a way that does not become xenophobic. That's what I'm saying.
All right.
Because I see enough xenophobia in the United States in this last election campaign. I don't want that disease to come.
Let me just ask us to recalibrate. We have a caller on the line who has been waiting for the last 10 minutes. Caller, good evening.
Hello, good evening, and good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. I am listening to discussion, and I just want to compliment the Prime Minister for that cabinet reshuffle, and I have the faith and the confidence that things will work out in the best interest of our country. And this time we have this COVID-19, this pandemic, regionally, internationally, and just to complement all that good that is taking place. And I know the leadership of Dr. Mitchell has done a track record. Look at after Hurricane Ivan. Look at her coming in office in 2013 to take the economy from where it was to where it until COVID come here. And I know that with the cabinet and with that team of men and hardworking women, we will do it again. So we call on all Grenadians, to support and work. In best interest is about Grenada. And this time I want to take this opportunity to congratulate Minister David for taking up this office, because I know in this time, that's going to be a crucial area, as Senator Allie has said, and we're looking forward to work with you, Minister, to take this country on that economic path with
Thank you so much,
everybody.
Thank you so much, caller. Mr. Dialli, you wanted to bump in here on this whole issue
of the Chinese investment.
Go right ahead. You might want to say Asian so that you don't offend the minister.
No. I am clear in my mind that investment from whatever nationality is welcome once it meets the conditions and terms that we offer. It is just so happens that the project in the north, the people of that descent, and I don't know about one in the south, Odette, probably you could educate me about the one in the south, but I do know that we have one in the south.
Is there any Asian business involvement in the Mount Hartman project?
Well, I don't know if that is Chinese as well. We don't know who the investors in Mount Hartman are yet, but that is another one.
Minister David, can you
clarify? There are many others that are not Chinese. We have Egyptian, we have Grenadian, we have other nationalities that are involved in projects, Americans. We don't talk about those, but we seem to want to zoom in on the ones that of a particular ethnicity. And, I recently heard a particular person talk about, if we have $1 billion project in the north and we give them passports at a certain price, there's 40,000 people we bring in as nationals, as citizens, and they could vote and change the political landscape. Again, I don't know where that comes from, because when you get citizenship under CBI, you don't have voting rights. So, when these kind of information go there, you tend to believe that there's a political overtone, which is unfortunate. Where I sit to only look at the investment from what it can bring to the economy, and hopefully all the indirect benefits that could come from having a project as intimated in the north. If that comes off as we want it to come off, the amount of indirect support that will be then given to agriculture and employment in various fields, and the lack of transporting of people having to move from Surtees to Tongue or other areas in St. George's for work is going to be significantly reduced. And I think at the end of the day, we need to ensure that the laws are followed. And I hear the EIA people, and I know the project in the north have just put out a release on how they intend to honor all the EIA concerns that were raised, and then going forward, they will have town halls with the people in the area to deal with the concerns raised. Example, like the NGO community and social partners that Ms. Mitchell represent in particular areas. So, and I think that is the way forward for all projects involving the one in St. David's. St. David's is another huge project, and that is American involvement and other nationalities. And we don't talk about that one. And that's a huge one, and that one will release a lot of people having to come to St. George's for jobs as well. So I think we need to be fair on the projects and how we classify them. And I really hope that we don't use nationality as one of the areas of classification.
So, Ms., you don't think that Grenadians should be overly concerned about the level of Asian involvement in the Grenadian economy?
Why? Because they have Asian involvement in Trinidad, they have Asian involvement in Dominica, in Africa, there's huge Asian involvement. And when you spoke of the Belt Road Initiative, Odette, let us remember that the country that holds the most debt for the United States is the Chinese government. And we need to understand that when you talk about debt and being overly incurred in debt, the Chinese government holds trillions of dollars in debt for the U.S. government. And we don't ever talk about that. We only talk about the possibility of getting...
We will have an exclusive program dealing with this, and it's just unfortunate it's already creeping up on 10 minutes to 10. Casandra, you've been silent on this issue. Casandra?
Well, yes, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity because I was itching to say something. I think the whole issue of xenophobia is being pushed by the people at this level, because on the ground it is not about the nationality of the individuals. I don't think the issue more is about the nationality. It's about the lack of transparency coming from our cabinet, from our elected officials. They are not communicating to us, the people, as to exactly what it is that's going on. I remember when Minister David signed the MOU with the Republic of China for the Belt and Road Initiative. As a young person, as a citizen looking on, I was rather baffled that all we heard was that the government of Grenada is signing an MOU with China, and it has something to do with the Belt and Road Initiative, but there was very little information coming from as to what it is that we are offering to China, what is China asking for in return. And while Minister David just said that China hasn't asked for anything in return, I'm rather taken aback by that they're giving so much without wanting anything in return. When you talk about the Chinese projects, we are not just looking at the nationality of the investors or the individuals who are part of the project. We are looking at the fact that you have a project funded by China, and most of the people working there are Chinese nationals. What about us as Grenadians? What about the unemployed Grenadians who are seeking employment? Why can't we... Just a second, Mr. Diallo. You can correct me when I'm just telling you the perception on the ground and what people are upset about. And you're free to correct me, but the issue is not xenophobia on really the nationality of the individuals. And I'm not saying there aren't people who are xenophobic, but I know for us we have a lot of concerns. The EIA, the lack of EIA, and we see work going on, and a lot of the times is putting the cart before the horse. So now you're talking about the investors are going to have town hall meetings, but that should have been done prior to the project being started. So xenophobia, I think, is being pushed by the wrong set of people, and it's not coming from us as civil society or even as Grenadians. That's not what we are concerned about. Odette mentioned, I'm getting passionate about this, Odette mentioned the debt trap. If we aren't giving China anything in return, and they are giving us so much, and we're seeing so many projects and China donating so much to Grenada, we are concerned that our government isn't communicating with us. What are we giving them? Are we going to be the model? I was looking at a report where Ambassador Dennis Antwine, when he attended an event in 2018, and he actually referenced Grenada as the Chinese model. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but the Chinese model. Chinese model for what? So there seems to be a lot of misinformation, lack of communication, and lack of transparency from our government. And I think that is one of our major concerns.
So let me just correct you, Casandra.
I think we're going to run out of time without my having a chance to make any contribution.
Campbell, after the break, you were on the cell phone. Mr. Diallo, go ahead. You were on the cell phone, Mr. Andall. Mr. Diallo, go ahead.
To Casandra, that there's a lot of information out there. It's a phone call away. So if you need information, please just call. CBI has a lot of information on these projects that you think and so on that we could give out within limits, of course, because there are some things that cannot be said at certain times based on the sensitivity of the information. And let's take Six Senses as an example. They started town halls as soon as the project broke wrong, and even before. So different investors will do things differently. I haven't heard you guys say anything about Six Senses. So, I mean, we need to be fair in all circumstances. And when we talk about these investments, the key must be what is the pros and cons of a particular investment for the country overall. And there will be cons, because in the essence of how investments are done, there will be some dislocation of some sort in some form, but you sometimes have to use that and look at the greater good and see whether or not the project will bring a greater good to the country versus some of the dislocations that will take place. And I'm just saying we need to be fair to all of it.
Good. Mr. Andall, we come to you now. And in fairness to us, we did come back to you. Unfortunately, you were not paying attention to us. You were on the cell phone. The floor is yours now, Mr. Andall.
I was trying to get something sorted out with my connection here. I had to switch devices and so on. That is why I was trying to handle it, all right? Anyway, thank you for the opportunity. Now, Mr. Allie, I have to correct you on one thing about voting rights of citizens. The Constitution of Grenada clearly bestows the right to vote on all citizens without distinction or discrimination. So whether you are a citizen by birth, naturalization, or CBI, the Constitution gives you the right. If Parliament passes out denying you that right, you can file a constitutional motion against it. Regarding investment, without a sound investment policy, we are going to continue to have the recolonization of our country. And I agree with Mr. David and Casandra and everyone else that this should not be a debate about what you look like or where you're from as an investor. What the debate should be about is what are we giving up? Are we destroying our country physically? For what? 6 senses, if that is even less suggest, bulldoze the whole set of mangroves. We're talking about going green and pure Grenada. This is what will affect the livelihoods of the fishing community in years to come. We're talking about back to front policy, no environmental or social impact assessment done. You embark on a project and then afterwards you mama guide people and tell them, oh, don't worry, we're gonna do it. So you build a house and draw the plan afterwards. This is backwardness. We have, what we are seeing in Grenada now is what, it reminds me of what I learned in school, something called the Scramble for Africa, where the European powers of the 19th century, they drew a big map of Africa. Belgium take a portion, France take, England, Holland take, whoever wanted to take. And right now, the NNP is passing Grenada. So we have a situation where people fought for the right to access our beaches in the 1970s, going back to Morris Bay and Lord Brownlow. And today, 40 odd years later, the people of St. David's have to march again to get access to their beach. Investors get permission to build, they encroach beyond the high water. When you talk about it, you are labeled as being anti-investment. You don't want poor people to get work. Then the jobs that come in with the tourism, especially after the construction is over, Grenadians have been reduced to the status of hewers of wood and haulers of water. I was so embarrassed to hear the soon-to-be Minister of Voucher talking about maid work and gardener work for St. Patrick. An investment policy must take into account the availability of local skills. That in the event that the skills don't exist here, whoever the investor is must have people understudying those who come with this skill, so that on the departure of the non-Grenadian, that position will be filled by a Grenadian. We have to start thinking more of and for our people. We have to start seeing our young people as being more than a vote that you give $700 a month for what's supposed to be 2 years, then morphs into 15 and 20 years with no future and no end in sight for poverty and dependency. So we are facing a massive problem. The problem is not an overnight one. It is a problem brought about fundamentally by corruption. The corruption is endemic to this regime and to this party. We see it in everything that they do. They talk, I heard Mr. David talking about Grenada, but why is it that when a poor person needs assistance to send a child to school, if they are perceived not to be of the Green tribe, they are denied? Why is it that young people on attending interviews for government programs and jobs have to be asked who they support politically? This sort of backwardness and tribalism is what is contributing towards a downward spiral of our country.
But Mr. Andall, do you have any proof of that, Mr. Andall, that somebody has gone for a job and they were asked which party they're supporting? Do you have any proof of that, Mr. Andall? Of people being asked to say which party they're associated with?
To start to reject those issues facing that.
Minister David, you seem to want to jump in here.
Yeah, because I'm confused. Mr. Andall is just throwing everything out there, using all these words and phrases as taking liberties. I mean, he talks about the scramble for Africa. Mr. Andall scrambled for Africa, but the colonial powers like Belgium and Britain and so on scrambling to develop Africa. I don't see how you equate investments in Grenada to scramble for Africa, but that's your use of words. Let me give you my position. Yeah, I hear you. Let me give you my view on development. There is always, and I have many discussions with the Redhead Foundation, and we have an excellent relationship. But there's always a tension between preservation and development. If you have to build your house, Mr. Andall, you have to cut down a tree. So you have to determine whether or not this tree is worth preserving, or whether or not your home is the more appropriate thing. So there's always that tension. And I applaud those who fight for preservation. I have always been part of that. For example, I have said we must preserve the library building in town. There are people who believe we should just demolish it and build up a four-story building. And they have a decent argument to say that we need more space for offices. But I believe there are some things worth preserving. So the tension and debate between us and persons like Casandra is a healthy debate. And it should lead ultimately to development. So yes, we need hotels. We need hotels because we need jobs. Mr. Andall, it's easy for those who have everything to say we should bring hotels. Now the question is, should the building of these hotels infringe on some things that we want to preserve? Obviously, no. But we must give up something in order to develop. So you must give up a piece of land space and a tree or something in order to develop. Where you do it should be, and I agree with you, Casandra, when you said there should be more information and we should be dialoguing. Because at the end of the day, this tension must always be resolved in the interest of the Grenadian people, not the interest of phrases and phraseology. Yes.
Mr. David, what is the government's plan to address this whole issue of the disconnect? Because you're looking at the nexus between the economy and what's happening and social concerns. And you saw that spilling over social concerns in the last 2 months.
But Odette, that has always existed. I have been in politics for 45 years. There's always that. The question is, how do you resolve it? And I think Casandra is correct when she says more information needs to flow and more discussions. We live in an information age. Everything is on Google, everything is out there. So there is no excuse for not giving information. And at times, we don't get information from civil society, and sometimes civil society don't get sufficient information from us. But I agree when we say we must continue the dialogue between us. But to suggest that there is some conspiracy on the part of anybody, and Mr. Andall, we love to throw the word corruption. It sounds sexy and all of that, but the issue is this.
It is true. It is true. And I will give you some examples in a while.
Well, you're probably after the examples because I don't think I want to spend all night tonight talking about that. What I want to talk about is how do we... Mr. Andall, I didn't disturb you, sir. How do we resolve the tension between development and preservation? And how do we get civil society? I think this government was able to get civil society on board through the most difficult times we had years ago. Maybe there's some tensions now, maybe there's some issues. But I believe that this government remains on the path to sustainable development. And as Chris said, we need investment. We need investments for jobs. I have not heard one comment from Mr. Andall on this. I've never seen.
I haven't had the opportunity to speak, Brother David.
Mr. Andall, I have never seen a project that Mr. Andall liked. Never seen a project Mr. Andall likes. He despises every single project. No, I agree. We should have EIAs. We should make sure that the mangroves, if that area is not preserved, that they are replanted, speak the range and speak to the other projects to ensure that we resolve it. But do not for 1 minute believe that we can develop this country without investment. Look, for example, I'm going into the Ministry of Agriculture. We need investments in agriculture. Look at Campbell. Campbell has come in and employed 130 people. And they are not Chinese investors. I don't hear anybody say about Chinese. But they are investors from outside. And they are employed 130 people in the agricultural sector. And that is what I hope to do. Bring in investment, because the origins and basis of this entire country from its inception in the 15th century was foreign investment. So the British, the French, and the British again. That is the basis on which we exist.
Minister David, it seems as though a switch has been turned on and you've gotten very warm and hot.
I love the debate, so sorry about it, but I do believe that this debate should continue, and I hope we can find a forum, Mr. Andall, and
I would love that, brother.
Okay, so
brother
at
Peter,
10 o'clock,
we must develop and we must seek capital from wherever we can get capital to develop agriculture. The farmers need investment in manufacturing and processing.
All right, closing comments, Minister David. Minister David, it's unfortunate that we have to wrap it up here, just when you were waxing warm. But here it is, two things. You can't get away without answering two questions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
When the producer spoke to you and told you that the program was labeled Current Affairs, you said to the producer, well, that could mean I could get asked where I sleep last night. You're not getting away without answering that question. You put it in our heads. Current Affairs? You want to answer that, Minister?
No, I stepped in at my home.
And the other question is, we understand you have a farm, and that's the reason you're being brought into agriculture?
Oh, Gilo, it's not the reason. I mean, it's mainly a coincidence. But no, funny enough, about 2 years ago, I bought about 9 acres. I always had a passion for agriculture. From a kid, I had a passion. In fact, after the revolution, the demise of the revolution in 83, I opened a chicken farm. But Lord have mercy, the feed was too expensive, so we had to eat out all the 300 chickens we had. So I always had a passion. And now I have a farm of 9 acres, but I call it a farm. But it's a little 9 acres. My son gets up 5 o'clock every morning and drives from St. George's to St. Andrews to tend the farm. So I'm not a farmer, but I try. I love the farm. We have goats, sheep, pig, and cows and so on. But it's a passion I had as a child. As my good friend Keith Clouden said the other day, since we were kids, we were planting kitchen gardens, and he knows that. But I hope I was brought into agriculture not because of that, but because the passion I had for foreign affairs, I intend to bring to agriculture so that we can develop the agricultural sector. And I look forward to a discussion with all of you about agriculture, because I do think, and Mr. Andall, I want to thank former Prime Minister Tillman Thomas for giving me an endorsement. Apart from Prime Minister Mitchell, the next Prime Minister who did it was Prime Minister Thomas. So I think we have bipartisan support on development of agriculture, and I look forward to your support, Casandra, your support from your sector. So let's have a conversation about agriculture.
Thank you so much. Mr. Allie, we're moving to you for closing comments, because Mr. David is going to go on for the rest of the day. Mr. Allie, your 2 cents, closing comments.
Well, I think the debate between Mr. Andall and Mr. David needs to be done on another program. Definitely, they have plenty to talk about with it. But just to say that from where I sit with Minister David in terms of agriculture and support from Marketing Board, we plan to give him as much support as we can, because we know that that is a difficult institution as well for us to get back up and running as it ought to. So from that point of view, we're happy to be around and to assist where we can. And on the investment front, of course, for civil society and for the rest of the country, rest assured that where I sit in CBI, whatever investments come, we will make sure that the laws are followed and the investors do what they're supposed to do under the law. And, take it from there. That is the most we can do on our side. And we bring in investors of all nations. We don't have no partiality one way or the other.
Mr. Allie, some people on the social media feed were asking for a clarification on your role with CBI. What's your position there?
No,
I'm chairman of CBI.
I thought it was me addressing that.
No. Okay, so chairman of CBI. Mr. Andall, you have 30 seconds and no more for closing comments. And in the meantime, we need a producer to just report to the studio, Mr. Slocum. Thanks.
In a debate with Mr. David, because he gets 80% of the pocket remnants. I don't really see it as a debate. Be that as it may, thanks for the opportunity. And Mr. David, before you leave, the minister responsible for CBI is supposed to table a motion, a report before the parliament every 6 months regarding the status of the program. When was the last year that report was tabled, sir, if you remember?
All right, so Mr. Andall, listen, hold on. Mr. David, let me tell you, I promise I'm going to organize a special program between yourself and Mr. Andall, because we're asking for closing comments and he is engaging you. Casandra, the closing words are yours this evening.
So Odette, let me just answer Mr. Andall. 6 months ago, the report was tabled on the 6 months performance. Right. So the report was tabled.
Closing comments are yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my concerns, some of which was my personal opinions as well as those from civil society whom I represent. To Mr. Allie, the CBI investors who broke the law, I hope that you will also hold them accountable as CBI chairman. Mr. Andall, I had to address this earlier to suggest that putting a young person as the Minister of Youth would kind of connect with young people is really, really not a good suggestion. We had a young person in the person of Minister Kate Lewis, and young people still felt that they were disconnected from youth and what was happening with the government and what's happening on the ground. So that just means that NDC has no clue how to deal with young people as well. I have to say that if you believe that that is the solution to solving youth issues, then NDC has a problem. We are going to be paying attention.
Please don't misquote the system.
As young people, we are going to be paying attention to what's happening. We are very concerned about national issues. As civil society, as always, we have been paying attention to what government is doing. I would suggest, and we will continue to suggest that government open the line of communication. We shouldn't have to be calling government to ask for information. We elected you to represent and to take care of our affairs. So you have a responsibility to report back to us, the people, as to what has been doing. I think it's sort of disrespectful to your employers, the people to be saying, call me if you need the information. No, the information should be provided. And that will solve a lot of the issues instead of us having to go and do the research and find the information ourselves. Government needs to be more transparent and accountable with what they're doing, regardless of what sector you're involved.
Thank you so much, Casandra, for those closing thoughts. And Minister David, I'm hearing a theme, and probably if we close out on the way we started, you're hearing the phrase transparency and accountability. Remember that phrase? Just inside.
Let me say this in closing, Odette, that me and Mr. Andall have a very good relationship, very respectful. We disagree on most things, but we agree that we should develop this country. I want to say that to the public, not to believe that there's some war going on with me and him. With respect to the reshuffle, I just want to say that let's look to see where it goes, but let everybody get on board with the new arrangements we have. With me as Minister of Agriculture, I am open to ideas, suggestions. I agree, Casandra. There needs to be an improvement in the flow of information. I think that's clear from some of the information that I hear being exposed out there. It's not correct. So it means there's some kind of happening somewhere. And with respect to going forward, let us have more lively debate. Let us discuss. Let us disagree. But let us agree on one thing: that we all want to develop this little land of art. Let us not believe that because we disagree, we need to kill each other. Let us disagree, but agree to disagree on what we disagree on.
We are muting the mic, and we're saying thank you. We want to say a very special thank you to our panelists this evening. The Honorable Peter David, the incoming Minister for Agriculture, has been serving in the role of Minister for Labour and Foreign Affairs. Mr. Joseph Andall of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Christopher Allie, who is a business sector representative in the Senate, and Ms. Casandra Mitchell, she is a civil society representative. Very passionate discussion this evening. We would have to engage a duo between two people. But I think, Casandra and Mr. Allie played good roles as referees and rapporteurs. So we want to thank them as well for making a lively program. And to the producers here at the GBN, General McDonald, Michael Alexis, Darius Slocum, and Kellen Batiste, on behalf of the entire News and Current Affairs Department of the Grenada Broadcasting Network, to you, our viewers and listeners at home and in the diaspora, we want to say thank you so much for always choosing GBN and for making Monday night your stop at Beyond the Headlines. So long for now. I'm Odette Campbell. We'll see you again next week.